Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, give me a raise or replace me. Force me to take 2 weeks of unpaid time off. Have fun running the place without me. You're not here to think ouch, but okay. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Give me a raise or replace me. Almost a decade ago I worked in a call center doing over-the-phone tech support. I worked there for almost 7 years until I was fired because the desk phone they issues me malfunctioned for 6 weeks straight, despite my continued twice-a-week complaints. They didn't even try to appeal my unemployment either. Anyway, I started there in 2008 and by 2010 I had switched from a customer service role to a tech support role, and then moved into a more senior tech support role, which did not come with extra pay. My job consisted primarily of calling customers back who had an issue that normal tech support was unable to resolve. If I had time, I was expected to help call back customers who left dissatisfied surveys as well. I was also given certain blocks of time during the week to monitor the interdepartmental chat room to help answer questions. I also had a lot of documentation to do to keep track of everything I did and said to a customer. I take pride in my work. Once I learned the ins and outs of the system, I became rather competitive. Each survey or escalation had an associated ticket. We were expected to close 60 tickets per month per person. This equated to just under 3 per day. In order to close a ticket, we either had to resolve their issue, or at least note their additional surveyory feedback, escalate their issue to the corporate office to die. More on that later, or leave 3 voicemails over 3 days and send them an email. Once I was comfortable with what I was doing, my goal became not to close the most tickets, but to absolutely destroy everyone else in how many I got done. The minimum was 60 per month, and there were a couple people in our 12-person department who never broke 100 and were normally doing 50 to 70 a month. Most people were in the 100 to 200 range, a few sometimes getting up to 250. I regularly did 400 or more every month for almost 3 years. I had days where I would make 75 phone calls a day. I also monitored the chat room, more often than required, wrote articles for our internal database, helped our slowest members with paperwork, answered incoming frontline emails if they were behind, and had low-level agents directly transfer live customers to me rather than escalating them if I knew I could resolve their issue right away. Towards the end of that 3 years, I also began helping out another department that dealt with customers who mailed their device in for repair. It wasn't that I was so much smarter than everyone or ridiculously good at troubleshooting, I am just organized and driven. When we had a slow month where almost nobody called us at all, I only did 125 tickets and read probably 7 hours a day. I read Stephen King's Dark Tower series in a week, entirely at work. The company I worked for, the one who signed my paychecks, was a contract company owned by a big multinational out of Canada. They took contracts from companies like DirecTV, Comcast, and USAA. I found out that the company I was doing contracted work for paid my company $35 per hour for my time, but I only saw $10.50 of that. I also was almost never allowed overtime, maybe 1 to 2 weeks a year for the entire 7 years. First-level leaders were salaried and, if they didn't work any overtime, made about $12.70. I heard that the next level leader made about $60,000 a year, and the building director double that. The company that made the product I was troubleshooting was like a dumpster fire. They sold a product that developed a hardware issue, which they knew was a hardware issue, but they forbid us from telling a customer that and instead told them that we were working on a software update. Despite being primarily in the USA, our website only offered user manuals in Spanish, and the website developer claimed that it was impossible to add a new tab for user manuals to the website. A co-worker recoded the website, hosting new pages on a personal server and linking every outside link, like to another part of the website, in just 45 minutes and presented it to our corporate office. Our warranty only allowed for repair. We would not ship out a replacement device, and would not provide any sort of loaner device. Minimum repair time was 3 weeks and the customer was responsible for shipping the device in, including paying for shipping and a box. If it got lost on the way, it wasn't our problem. Apparently our repair center decided that first in, first out wasn't a convenient system for processing the repairs, so they just pulled however they felt like it. I had the pleasure of calling customers who had mailed their device in over a year prior because it wouldn't even power on to tell them that it was now out of warranty, and we no longer had any parts to repair it anyway, and would they like us to mail it back them? Now comes the malicious compliance. The first came in when the company tried to launch an in-house made data backup service. It was extremely poorly developed and failed miserably. Much better and free systems existed, and even if the company's system had worked flawlessly, it had no benefits that I could see. When we started receiving complaints that it was not working, our corporate office told us to just immediately escalate to them, don't even troubleshoot. I knew nothing was ever going to come of that, of letting cases just trickle in. I knew that corporate would just let them die. So I came in one day, and I took all of the pending cases for issues with the backup service and entered them into the ticket service program. Now this is where it got really good. At the time, when you created a ticket, it would send you 3 emails by the time you had finished. That's before leaving notes or closing it, just entering information. I knew this, and I knew I could change the responsible person on the ticket from myself to the person at corporate in charge of this issue at the beginning instead of assigning it to them at the end. I entered 128 tickets for that issue alone that night. I was working second shift at the time. It only took me a few hours. I had plenty of time to do real work after that. That means the person at corporate who was supposed to handle these cases came into work the next day with over 350 new emails in their inbox. When I got to work the following day, I was told we were no longer escalating those issues, and instead just telling customers that we were working on fixing it. Those customers never got called back, and the person at corporate later lost their job because they barely ever got anything done. My last malicious compliance came when they started letting people work from home. They did this to save on operating costs as they expanded the workforce. By moving associates to work from home, this was 2012, they didn't have to pay for electricity or as much bandwidth, etc. If you worked from home, you were issued a terminal and keyboard/mouse and a phone. You had to supply a monitor, and the system was a virtual machine. When an opportunity came up to switch to work from home, I put in for it. They moved people in groups as they purchased new equipment. When they found out that I wants to work from home, they tried to talk me out of it because I wouldn't be able to do escalations and serve errors at home. I would have to be frontline tech support again. I asked if I could have a raise then. I was already topped out and knew I would never get a raise ever. They said no, so I chose to work from home. My main reason for working from home was actually money. I didn't get a pay cut, and I was spending a lot of money on gas, because I lived 25 miles from work and gas was over $4 a gallon at the time. Working from home was like a 50 cents per hour raise, because I was spending $20 a week on gas. Working from home was also great for me because I could work in my pajamas, and didn't waste over an hour driving to and from work. I never understood why they wouldn't let me do what I had been doing before from home. I had all the same tools at home as in the call center. When I left my old department to work from home, I was doing at least 25% of the work for the entire department. I was closing 400 and 500 tickets a month, and still wasting an hour or 2 every day. They ended up needing to move 3 people into the department to replace me. I stayed with the company for 3 years after that, mostly because the work was easy, and I wasn't particularly motivated to find something better. I ended up getting fired in the end. Like I said, they issued me a desk phone. It was like a landline phone, but had an LCD screen with some configurable options on it, and you could plug in a headset, and it worked over the internet. About 6 weeks before I got fired, my phone started having an issue where it would drop calls. Normally, it would ring and you would press answer. But it started having an issue where it would ring once, or half a ring, or sometimes no ring at all, and then hang up on the customer. Sometimes it would then place me in a state where I couldn't take calls again until I pressed a button on the phone. I notified my supervisor immediately when it first happened and continued to do so twice a week over the next 2 weeks. Despite my repeated complaints, I was told to just watch it, and she refused to send me out a replacement. A week before I was fired, I was working on a day when my supervisor was not. A different supervisor saw that I was in this unavailable state, and despite me telling him that it was my desk phone, and that it had been happening for weeks, insisted on giving me a formal verbal warning. When my supervisor came in the next day, she immediately called me and told me she was upgrading my verbal warning to a final written warning. The company, like many, had a 4-step system of a verbal, written, final written warning, and then terminated. She gave no reason for why she was upgrading it to a final written. A few days later I noticed that one of my tools was not working correctly, but managed to struggle through until lunchtime when I restarted my terminal. After lunch, when I restarted, I was unable to log back in. I immediately texted my boss. We had to clock out for lunch. I didn't want to be in more trouble, and I didn't want to be underpaid either. I then called our help desk, but I was back on second shift, so it was after-hours support, and they were unable to help me. It was a Friday night, and they said that normal help desk personnel wouldn't be available until Monday morning. I hung up and called my boss instead. It went to voicemail. I continued to try to reach out to my boss Saturday, Sunday, and Monday via text, phone, and email. I had been scheduled to work all weekend. I normally had days off in the middle of the week, but couldn't do so as I was unable to log into my terminal or phone. Monday morning I called the help desk again, and was told that I wasn't part of the company anymore, but there was no reason listed as to why, and there was obviously nothing they could do. Ask the help desk. My boss finally reached out to me on Wednesday, via text, and said that I had been fired for call avoidance. I filed for unemployment. It was denied, but when I appealed, the company didn't even have someone call into the phone interview, so I won by default. I was on unemployment for 6 weeks before starting at my current job. Since then I have gotten 2 promotions, and am currently making more than double what I made at my old job. To top it all off, last year the company lost a class action lawsuit for making people sign into their terminals and open software before clocking in. They didn't want to pay Pete for those 5 or so minutes a day, and they lost millions of dollars. I got a check for a few $100 out of it, which was a nice touch. Forced me to take 2 weeks of unpaid time off. Have fun running the place without me. I used to work at this one coffee shop, my first chain coffee shop after working only at local or family-run ones. Simply put, it was hell. Owners would micromanage everything without knowing anything about how the business ran, never listened to their staff, and only cared about the money. Typical out-of-touch owners of a business. I was hired to replace a manager that had walked out of one of their locations, leaving it with only part-time staff. I was told I was being hired on as the acting manager until they either hired someone else or they felt I would be a good fit for the position after my 6-month probation. I won't go into everything that went wrong because there's a lot, but to summarize, it was literal hell. I was expected to cover all no-shows, which had me working 90 to 100 hours a week. I wasn't allowed to fire anyone no matter how many things they did wrong. Someone actually showed up to work drunk, and I still wasn't allowed to fire them, and any changes I wanted to implement were shot down, like replacing old parts in the espresso machine, shortening our hours to save money on labor, bringing in items that customers would always ask for. I was stressed, overworked, and irritated as hell when the owner comes in to talk to me about sales for the store. We weren't making enough to warrant the hours I had scheduled, and he wasn't going to pay me any more overtime. I would only work the hours I'm scheduled, and if someone no-showed, I had to have someone else cover those shifts. I tried to explain to him that I only came in when no one else would cover. It just so happened that the people he allowed to continue to work here had terrible availability. Making the schedule was already hard enough. Getting someone other than myself to come in on their day off was next to impossible. On top of all that, I had to learn the ropes myself. There was no one to train me, so all the managerial knowledge, ordering, scheduling, I learned myself. No one other than me knew how to order coffee, had the numbers for the repair guys, anything other than making coffee, and using the till. I was the only one that knew. He wasn't hearing any of it. Owner, all I'm hearing is excuses. This is your store. If you can't handle running it, I'll start looking for someone who will. Me, wasn't that the plan though? It's been 3 months since my probation period ended, and you never gave me the manager position, so I assumed you were looking for someone to take over. Owner, I think it's in your best interest to take some time off. Start thinking about your position here and whether you actually want to start moving up. I had mentioned in the interview, I was looking forward to working my way up in the business. Me, I can't. There's no one to cover me. Owner, you're taking this time off. Me, is this a paid break? Owner, no, consider this a timeout for you to get yourself sorted. Take the 2 weeks to rest, and we'll see what your position will be like when you get back. Me, owner, I can't really afford to take that amount of time off. I can't even take 2 days without having to come in and cover. Owner, don't worry about the business right now. It'll run without you. Now, to put into perspective, I was basically the manager at that point. I made the schedules, I did the orders, I knew the codes to the safe and the alarm. I wasn't allowed to hire someone to assist me, and no one worked enough time to be able to cover even half my shifts. I knew this, the staff knew this, customers knew it. I made sure to block all work numbers and spent those 2 weeks looking for another job. I managed to find one after a few days that paid significantly more. I sent my resignation email to payroll, and the owner, knowing he never checks it, deleted my account off the POS system. Being a manager means I have access to it from home, and spent the rest of the leave catching up on well-deserved sleep, having blocked all work numbers. I'm not getting paid, so I'm not working. According to my coworkers, sh*T started going wrong the next day. One of the openers didn't show, and the next staff member didn't have keys. Owner wasn't answering his phone, so they left a message. Owner didn't show up until one of the regulars called asking if the place was closed down. He showed up 4 hours after they were supposed to open. Orders weren't done, inventory was missed, for no shows, you name it, it went wrong. Owner tried every way he could to get a hold of me, even using a customer's phone to call me. Too bad I didn't answer any calls that weren't in my contacts already. After 2 weeks, I turn my phone back on and get a call the same day from owner. We agree to meet the next day. Owner: so, you've had some time to think. Me: I have. It's really given me perspective on my position here. Owner: we can start you back on your normal hours for now, and we're looking for a manager to take on more of your responsibilities. Me: oh, that's good. I'm actually quitting. He was silent for a few minutes. I think he was waiting to tell him I was kidding. Sucks for you, buddy, I'm serious. Me: I've already emailed payroll and removed my login from the computer. Here are my keys. Good luck. And I left. Owner tried calling me a few times, but stopped once I told him to check his email. I was on okay terms with some of the staff that worked there, and apparently majority of them had quit after I had left. Owner did find a replacement pretty quickly, but without anyone to train them. Owner didn't know anything about running the business. They were F***ked from the get-go and left pretty soon after they were hired. My petty A**guess is always checking reviews from customers and employees, and they have consistently sucked for the past year, and seem to be on a downward trend over the past year. You're not here to think ouch, but okay. About a decade ago, I was the new guy at the company. We have people fly in from all over the world to start putting gear together before leaving again for job sites, and one of the things I did in my earlier days was pick those people up from the airport, take them to their hotel after work, etc. I pick a guy up who's going to be my boss on an upcoming job. The airport is about an hour from our HQ and hotel, if you take the highway and main roads. When I meet him at the airport, he makes a request that I follow the directions on this awesome new GPS app that he's got on his phone. Swears it finds the absolute fastest routes. I'm paid by the hour and I'm the new guy, so sure, no problem. It ends up taking almost 25% longer than the main roads would have, but I'm not bothered. The next day, I'm asked to take him to his hotel. It's a straight shot a few miles down the road, but the road is always stop and go at rush hour. I make a turn off the road almost immediately in order to take a route that I know is faster, and he starts giving me a gentle amount of grief about not listening to his magical GPS app. I get him to the hotel in great time, but he still just won't stop insisting that the main road, which we could see was backed up, would have been faster. Okay, fine. A couple days later, we drive a few hours to our primary job site. The trip is fine, I follow his magic app and we arrive without incident. It's the largest job I've done so far, and I admittedly stumbled with a little bit of it. Boss tries to give me a pep talk at the end of day one, but fails miserably. One of the critiques he gave me is you're not here to think. There are engineers on the job, and there are techs. I'm just a tech, and I'm told I'm basically there to do the grunt work as spec and just listen to what people like him tell me to do. Pretty demoralizing lecture, honestly. But I take it to heart. Once the event is over, it's my job to take boss man back to the airport, which I'd like to remind you at this point is in the city I live in, and not where he's from. We're running a little later than I would prefer to, but he's the kind of guy who would rather get to the airport 15 minutes before his flight boards. And as always, we're using his GPS, which he is still raving about. I don't know if the dude's friend invented the app or something, but he's just seriously fawning over it. Well, we approach what I know is the exit to the airport, but the app says to stay on the highway and take the next exit in a mile or two. So I follow the app, having learned my lesson from the boss, and soon we're stopped dead in a tight, single-lane construction zone. Boss realizes this and starts to panic. And then starts asking if I'm sure I took the right route. The exit I'd normally take for the airport was a little ways back, but the GPS said to keep going. You went past the exit for the airport? His voice is raised, but not shouting. I went past an exit for the airport, I calmly replied. I'm sure this one will get us there, but with the speed traffic is moving, I don't know if we'll make your flight. It's already a pretty tight connection. He shouted at me this time, what were you thinking? Since the car was stopped dead, I turned my head so I could meet his eyes, and very blankly said I'm not here to think. If Uber had existed there at the time, I think he would have gotten out of the car with his bag and called for a ride. As it is, I spent the rest of the trip listening to him yell at some poor airline agent about getting his flight rebooked, since it was at this point that he wasn't going to get there in time. And the thing is, this really wasn't even malicious on my end, I was just too timid to rock the boat anymore, so I was doing things exactly as I was told. Not my fault that it bit him in the ass. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.